Hi guys, meet me again with Cindy Himawan. So today's our topic is about the process for purchase to pay, okay, or sometimes we call it procure to pay also. So in this process, in this topic, so actually we're going to learn about the process on how the company will buy, okay, for the raw material, or it's also possible that, let's say, for the company that having the company is retail, so it's mean they're not only buying the raw material but also they will buy the finished goods. Okay, so basically the purchase to pay process is when the company needs to buy something, okay, either the raw material, either finished goods, or any kind of things that the company needs to buy, and then until the customer pay it to the vendor. Okay, let's go start. So again, for the three things that we need to know, in the ERP things, in the process of ERP, so there are three things that we need to be concerned. So the first one is about the organizational structure. So the organizational structure is actually um, like how we're going to uh, separate separate the data, and then how we're going to separate uh, the authority. Okay, so how the functional department can access the data, that will be separate into organizational structure. And then there will be a master data and also the process. So let's start first for the organizational structure. So just let's say that in the company, so we have the perusahaan, and then we have the organisasi pembelian, okay, and then we also have the organisasi for penjualan, okay, and then we have pabrik, then we have gudang. Okay, usually this is the structure in the company. And then so in the ERP, usually we call the perusahaan as a company code. Okay, if you still remember that usually the company code can be differentiated based on the tax code. Okay, or in Indonesia we call it as an NPWP. Okay, so if the company will have a separate NPWP, so the company code also will be separate. And then inside the company, we will have the purchasing organization. The purchasing organization is the organization that will be handled for the purchasing things. And then the company also will have the sales organization, whereby that is the organization that handle about the sales process. Okay, and then we also the company also will have plant, which is represent the public, and then we'll have the storage location, whereby the storage location is actually represent the gudang or warehouse. Okay, so in this purchasing to pay process, in the purchasing process, so the organizational structure will be differentiate into the purchasing organization. Okay, and then we will have uh, inside the purchasing organization, usually we'll have a purchasing group. The purchasing group can be differentiated by the type of products that going to procure, that going to be purchased. So let's say if the company wants to buy the raw material, so the purchasing group is the purchasing group raw material. And then if, let's say, the company wants to buy, like, let's say, the packaging or the finished goods, then usually it will be separate into another purchasing group. And it's also possible also for the company if they want to separate the purchasing group into several area. Let's say the company having branch in many cities, so the purchasing organization can be centralized, only one, but the purchasing group can be separate into many cities. It's possible to do that. Okay, and then there will be a plan where the plan is represent the public or the manufacturing side, or where we going to store our products, uh, whereby usually in the public we will have many warehouses, and that warehouses we call as the storage location. Usually the storage location will be differentiated into the raw material, into the accessories, semi-finished goods, and finished goods, and so on. Okay, so that is the organizational structure. And then there will be a master data that we're going to be used in the process. Okay, so the first master data we call as a vendor master. So the vendor master is actually will handle will manage the information about the supplier, the name, the address, the contact, and then like uh, uh, what is the preference payment, like whether we need to pay in cash, or we need to pay uh, in credit, and so on. So that will be handling in the vendor master. And then we also will use the master data of material master, whereby the material master will manage the information about the product. The product here is not only the finished goods, but the all type products that will be used in the company. So whether it will be in the form of finished goods or materials, semi-finished goods, and also the accessories. So basically all the products that exist in the company will be need to be stored in the material master. Okay, so the material master here is actually uh, will contain like the information like the name, the code, the description, the weight, the height, the volume, and it's also will related to the financial, like defining uh, what is the inventory chart of account. Okay, so what is the inventory account for that particular product. We're going to see that later when we do the application later. Yeah? So I will show you about the accounting in the material master. And then we also will have the purchasing information record, whereby actually the purchasing information record is a combination between vendor, material, and price. So it's like a list we uh, that we put the information of the vendor, and then what material that we buy from that vendor, and then what is the price, what is the minimum quantity, and so on. So some of the application might take the purchasing information record based on the history data. Okay, so let's say we ever buy from the vendor, and then the history, that purchasing history will be automatically stored in the purchasing information record. But then some of the application uh, also not provided the automatically created, but we able to create it manually. Means that we need to put who is our vendor, what is the material list, the price, the quantity, and so on. Okay, so this is the three main of the master data that we're going to use in this process. Okay, so let's start for the process. Okay, So whenever there is a need to buy some product, okay, so we will have to make what we call with the purchase requisition. Okay, so the purchase requisition is actually will be defined what will be the needs. Okay, so the PR, okay, actually can be created in a two ways. So the first we can create manually, or sometimes we call it as a direct. Okay, so the PR is created manually whenever the other department is having needs to buy something. Let's say me as a lecturer, when I found that I need a paper or I need a marker or another stationery, that so I will make a PR to purchasing department. Okay, so I will make a request saying that I need a paper, I need a speed marker, I need a pen, and so on. Then I will request it to the purchasing department. So that request we call it as a purchasing requirement, sorry, purchasing requisition, and it created manually. Okay, but the PR also can be created automatically. Okay, we call it as indirect, because the PR can be automatically created when the MRP run. Okay, if you still remember about the MRP stands for material requirement planning. Okay, so basically the material requirement planning is where the system will calculate the demand. Okay, so the system already collect the demand forecasting, and then the system will suggest so the system will suggest the next month demand, okay, based on the previous forecast. And then after that the system will calculate like how much we should buy, how much we should produce. Okay, then after the system will calculate how much we should produce, and then it goes to the component itself. So let's say, if the example, let's say we want to know, let's say our product is bakso. Okay, so we, based on the previous sales, we know that uh, our sales is 1000. Okay, and then the using the forecasting calculation and so on, then system say that for the next month sales bakso will be the sales for bakso next month will be, let's say, 1200. Okay, and then it means that at least we will produce 1200 bakso as well. Okay, so it means the system will calculate back into the what is the component inside the bakso. Let's say how many meat needs, how many flour need, how many other ingredients needed, and then system will calculate how will generate it, the PR automatically. Okay, the uh, based on the needs of the production. Okay, so that's what we call with the MRP will generate it, the PR automatically. Okay, based on the demand, and then calculate the BOM. Okay, and then it will generate it, the PR. And then it's also possible that the PR will be created from the sales order. Okay, so whenever that so this is the case when, let's say, we are using the make to order type product. So whenever there is a sales order, then we will buy the things. let's say our products is retailing and make to order, it means that we need to wait until there is a customer size order, and then the PR will be generated, okay, because there is a customer order, and then it will propose a needs to the purchasing department to buy based on what customer order. And then it will be also based on the production order. It means that if, let's say, okay, usually the purchasing for the raw material will be done before the production order, right? Because it will be too long if we need to buy the raw material first before we do the production order. Production order is actually when we do the manufacturing, okay. So usually the raw material is already prepared, and then we will going to start the production. But for some cases where the raw material is, let's say, expensive, or let's say the raw material cannot be stored for a long time, or maybe the raw material is quite limited edition, that and then maybe hard to get, okay. So that's why sometimes the raw material cannot be stored before the production. So that's why it's possible that we need to wait until the production really will be done, and then the purchasing request will be created, okay. So let's say when we need like maybe for case of bakso, where we cannot really store meat in a long time, okay. So let's say we will raise the production order first. We just need to make sure how much the product how much the product that we're going to produce, and then the purchasing department will buy the meat. So that's why in that case the PR is only created automatically after the production order created. And then in terms of the maintenance order, so the maintenance order is where the company will doing the service for the asset, let's say service for the machine, service for the uh, what machine, and then the computer, or even the car, the aircon, okay. So whenever they do the maintenance order for that asset, so it's possible that there is some spare part that need to be replaced. So when they do the maintenance thing, and they find that they will need to buy some spare parts, so the PR will be generated automatically, okay. So those are the things that will be uh, trigger the purchasing requisition will be created automatically, okay. So when we after the purchasing, okay, so the purchasing requisition is actually to list down all the needs, okay, because we need to track down all the needs first. But actually the purchasing requisition is still inside the company, or we can call it as still internally made in the company. So the PR is still inside the company only, yeah. So after the purchasing requisition is created, then we will go to the process of requirement sourcing, whereby we need to list we already know about the needs, and then now the question is uh, where where is our source, okay, to provide the needs. So that's why in the requirement sourcing, the first thing we can list down the internal sourcing, whereby the internal sourcing talking about uh, whether our subsidiary company, okay, the whether our company can provide our needs or not. in case of like Indofood and Bogasari, okay, let's say when Indofood wants to make Indomie, they need the flour. Okay, so the first sourcing list will be from the internal sourcing, whereby from Bogasari. The Bogasari is the subsidiary company in for Indofood. So whereby the Bogasari is actually producing the flour, and then let's say again the Indomie needs having an oil. Okay, so the oil will be produced by Bimoli, which is Bimoli also the subsidiary company of the Indofood. So that's what we call with the internal sourcing. So we list down what whether the our company or our subsidiary company can fulfill our needs. And then we also will have the source list, okay, whereby actually this source list is will be linked with the PIR master data that we already create. Okay, so if you still remember, just now I explained about the master data PIR, purchasing information record. Okay, whereby that purchasing information record will be list down uh, all the vendor and what is the material that they are provided. So after we have the PR, then we can let's say we don't have any internal sourcing, then we will check into the source list. Whether we already have the list of the vendor that can provide our needs. And then we also need to have a look into the outline agreement. Okay, so whereby outline agreement is actually talking about our contract with the vendor. Okay, so we need to check whether we already have agreement with the vendor, whereby the agreement usually can be differentiated into two types. The first type we call as a contract, okay, whereby we have the agreement with the vendor uh, in certain period that we will buy to them in term of so okay, in the contract usually we're not saying the detailed scheduling, but we're only saying that in the certain period we will buy like how many amount to that vendor. Okay, uh, whereby the second type of the agreement is we call as a scheduling agreement, whereby the difference with the contract is in the scheduling the agreement we already state clearly like when we want the product is delivered. So let's say we want to make that our product delivered in once in 2 weeks or once in a month. Okay, so we already define the scheduling date, whereby in the contract we only state the amount of the contract. Let's say we want to buy how many amount, how many dollars, but it's possible, let's say the period is within 1 year, so it's okay if I only buy one time but the whole amount is fulfilled. Okay, so let's say I already have agreement, let's say 1 million rupiah with the vendor, then in the scheduling means that 1 million will be separate into several delivery, and the delivery is already state. That's what we call it the scheduling agreement. But when we talk about the contract, we only say the amount, and then so it's possible if I only buy one in the December, but in the December I buy the whole product as much as 1 million. Okay, so that's the difference in the outline agreement. So we need to make sure first also whether we have the outline agreement, because if we have the agreement with the vendor, it means that we need to fulfill that first before we change into other vendor, because it's possible that during the agreement, usually we already have like a special price with the vendor, or maybe we can have like a penalty or something. So make sure we need to check whether we have the agreement or not. And then if let's say we don't have the internal sourcing, we don't have the source list, it means we don't have any historical data with the vendor, and we also don't have any agreement with the vendor, means we need to ask the vendor to give us a quotation. Okay, so that's why we call it as request for quotation, or what we call with the RFQ, whereby the vendor will provide us with a quotation, okay, penawaran. So they will the vendor will submit their quotation to us, like they say they offer this product with this price, with this like lead time, and so on and so on. That's what we call with the RFQ. Okay, so uh, after the RFQ is submitted, okay, then we will have the process that what we call with the vendor evaluation, whereby in the vendor evaluation, okay, so this is the example, like we have the purchasing request, okay, and then the purchasing request will generate the RFQ, okay. We will ask the vendor to submit their quotation, okay, and then from that quotation, then we will do the evaluation. The evaluation here can be done manually, it means that we are manually evaluation them, or sometimes the ERP application, sometimes they already provide the vendor evaluation things, so usually it will be using what we call with the vendor scoring. Okay, so we will make the prioritize of our criteria. Let's say whether our prioritize is based on the quality, based on the price, based on the lead time, or whatever. Okay, so after we make the criteria, and then we will put the weight for each of criteria for each vendor. Okay, and then we will calculate who is the biggest score among the vendor, so that will be the winner vendor, and we will create the purchase order for that winning vendor. But for the rest vendor, then we will make the rejection letter. During the session discussion, then I will explain about the vendor scoring later, yes, because it might be more easier for us to do the calculation. Okay, and then so okay, just to make clear that the vendor evaluation is only will be done if we are doing the RFQ, or let's say when we want to compare, but when we want to compare whether we want to use the internal sourcing or source list, or the vendor from outline agreement, or for the RFQ. Okay, let's say uh, let's say like for Indofood, okay, when they want to decide whether they want to buy a flour, beli tepungnya, okay, when they want to buy the flour from Bogasari or from another vendor, so it's also possible to do the vendor evaluation as well. Okay, so even though in here I only put the vendor evaluation is only for the RFQ things, but actually it's also possible to decide the evaluation uh, if we have this four type of sourcing. Okay, so after we do the vendor evaluation, okay, we will make a purchase order, whereby the purchase order is actually the final order that we are going to give to the vendor. Okay, so if the PR, requirement sourcing, and the vendor evaluation is done internally in the company, but for the purchase order, we call it as a legal order, because the purchase order, by the time we create the purchase order to the vendor, we should not cancel it because it's already fixed, because it's already have a legal things. Okay, so basically the purchase order will be created by the purchasing department, and then give to the vendor. So it will state what is the material, what is the fixed material and the fixed product, and also the fixed price that will be uh, that will be purchased from that vendor. Okay, so after the PO created, uh, when there is a shipment, okay, so the purchasing department will notify the vendor, and then there is a shipment. Okay, so when the shipment is start from the vendor, then the purchasing department will create inbound delivery order. Okay, so basically inbound delivery order is a document or is an order uh, from the department to a warehouse department, saying that, guys, we will we will have a shipment coming. Okay, so please prepare the warehouse, please prepare then everything. Okay, because there will be a shipment coming from the vendor. Okay, so that is the inbound delivery order. So in the inbound delivery order, it will state all the material and the quantity that will be shipped from the vendor. So it means that the material and the quantity cannot be changed or cannot be input manually. When whatever state in the PO, it will also appear in the inbound delivery order. Okay, let's say if the PO state we buy material A 10 pieces, we buy material B 10 pieces, it means the inbound delivery order we also will state the same material and also the same quantity. Even though it's also possible that the shipment will be done partially. Let's say the vendor say that they don't have the full quantity yet, so it's might possible that um, the quantity for material A is only being shipped 7 pieces, for material B is only 2 pieces. So the inbound delivery can be adjusted according to how many quantity that vendor sent. Okay, but the quantity cannot be higher than what state in the PO. Okay, so it can be less, because it might goes to what we call with the back order. Okay, the vendor will send it again, but the quantity cannot be higher from the PO. Okay, and then so after the goods coming into our warehouse, so whenever the goods come here, but our stock is not yet added, right? The stock is not yet increased, because basically the goods is still just in the uh, receiving area, so it's not yet stored in our warehouse. And so usually in the receiving area, the warehouse people will check the goods, whether the order is same, the material is correct, the quantity is correct, and also the quality is correct. So whenever is everything is okay, then the warehouse will do the goods receipt. So the inbound delivery is created by the purchasing department, but the goods receipt will be done by the warehouse people. Okay, whereby actually this is like a cross authority, like a confirmation. So the purchasing department saying that they order 10 pieces, so the warehouse people will confirm how many quantity that they will receive. Okay, so in the goods receipt, actually what happened is when we do the goods receipt, the stock will be updated. Okay, the stock quantity will be increased, and then because the stock quantity increase, it means that the asset is changes, right? So whenever when there is a changes, okay, when there is a changes in the stock, in the asset, means we will have accounting document. Okay, and then the accounting document, okay, it will make, okay, so if the stock quantity is actually added only in the pieces, right, means that we will need to, in the accounting side, we will make it a line as well. So let's say when we buy one pieces is $10, so if we receive $10, as if we receive 10 pieces, it's mean the stock value will also update it as $100, because 10 times 10, yeah, become $100. Okay, so the accounting journal is inventory, the debit will be in, the inventory will be increased in the debit, and the credit will be GRIR. Okay, GRIR is actually stands for goods receipt or invoice receipts. Okay, uh, actually usually when we buy something, okay, when our asset added, okay, the inventory is added in the debit, okay, but in the credit should be our bank or cash, okay, because our bank is decreased and our inventory is added, right? That is the common sense. But the thing is, for time being, we don't get any uh, invoice from the vendor. So by the time the goods receipt coming, we only receive the goods. We don't receive any invoice from the vendor. So that's why instead of the cash or bank or the account payable, we put the temporary, we put it in the temporary account first, what we call with the GRIR. Okay, so the debit will be in, so it's still the same, the inventory is still the same because it's increasing, right? So the inventory increasing, we put in the debit, but for the credit we put it as GRIR. Okay, and then when we do the invoice receipt, okay, it means that when the vendor give us the invoice, means we need so the finance usually will check whether the material is already correct. Okay, so usually the invoice receipt will be based on the how many material and the quantity that received during the GR. Okay, so example, if just now the material A is only received as much as 7, so it means the invoice receipt also will only 7 pieces. It means it will be total in 70 because the price is $10. Yeah, so what we call with the integrated things here is, in the invoice receipt we cannot add any additional material. Okay, so whatever material state in the purchase order and received during the goods receipt, then it will show in the invoice receipt, as well as the price. So whatever price state in the purchase order, then it will be shown in the invoice receipt. Okay, and then whatever quantity that will be appear in the goods receipt, sorry, whatever quantity that we already input in the goods receipt, then it will also appear in the invoice receipt. So that's what we call with the integration things, because it, the both of the material, the quantity and the price will be linked one each other. So in the invoice receipt, because we already received the invoice, then put we can change the GRIR, we convert it into AP or account payable. Okay, because the invoice already coming, so we need to take down, we need to record our account payable, whereby later on the term of payment will be start when we note the account payable. So let's say let's say we already have agreement with the vendor that we're going to pay in the 30 days after the invoice coming. So we need to fulfill, or we need to pay our account payable 30 days after we receive the invoice from the vendor. Okay, so that's about the invoice receipt, and then we go to the payment to vendor. So this will be the last step of the process, whereby we need to pay the vendor. Okay, so before the term of payment due, then we need to pay. So when it pay to the vendor, then the journal will be the AP will be decreased, whereby payable is decreased in the debit, and the bank also decrease, because bank is asset, so asset is decreasing in credit. Okay, so this is the whole process from we taking notes the needs in the purchasing requisition, and then we find out the sourcing, and then we do the vendor evaluation, okay, to choose the best vendor, and then we order to the vendor through purchase order or PO, and then we request the warehouse to prepare the warehouse, because there will be a shipment coming, and then the goods confirm coming into our warehouse, receiving into our warehouse, so the stock increasing, as well as the value stock also increasing. Okay, and then we will receive the invoice from the vendor, and then we take notes our account payable, and then in the end we will pay to the vendor, means that our payable is decreasing, and as well as our money in the bank. Okay, so that is the whole process of P2P, purchase to pay. Okay, so that's the topic for today's. Hope you enjoy. Thank you.